بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الرحمن علم القرآن، خلق الإنسان علمه البيان. الشمس والقمر بحسبان، والنجم والشجر يسجدان. والسماء رفعها ووضع الميزان، ألا تطغوا في الميزان، وأقيموا الوزن بالقسط ولا تخسروا الميزان. والأرض وضعها للأنام، فيها فاكهة والنخل ذات الأكمام، والحب ذو العصف والريحان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ خلق الإنسان من صلصال كالفخار، وخلق الجان من مارج من نار. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ رب المشرقين ورب المغربين، فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ مرج البحرين يلتقيان، بينهما برزخ لا يبغيان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يخرج منهما اللؤلؤ والمرجان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ وله الجوار المنشآت في البحر كالأعلام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ كل من عليها فان، ويبقى وجه ربك ذو الجلال والإكرام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يسأله من في السماوات والأرض كل يوم هو في شان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ سنفرغ لكم أيها الثقلان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يا معشر الجن والإنس إن استطعتم أن تنفذوا من أقطار السماوات والأرض فانفذوا، لا تنفذون إلا بسلطان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران. يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ فإذا انشقت السماء فكانت وردة كالدهان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ فيومئذ لا يسأل عن ذنبه إنس ولا جان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ يعرف المجرمون بسيماهم فيؤخذ بالنواصي والأقدام. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ هذه جهنم التي يكذب بها المجرمون، يطوفون بينها وبين حميم آن. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ ولمن خاف مقام ربه جنتان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ ذواتا أفنان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ فيهما عينان تجريان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان؟ فيهما من كل فاكهة زوجان. فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على فرش بطائنها من استبرق وجنى الجنتين دان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن قاصرات الطرف لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان كأنهن الياقوت والمرجان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان هل جزاء الإحسان إلا الإحسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان ومن دونهما جنتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان مدهامتان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان فيهن خيرات حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان حور مقصورات في الخيام فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان لم يطمثهن إنس قبلهم ولا جان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان متكئين على رفرف خضر وعبقري حسان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان تبارك اسم ربك ذي الجلال والإكرام.
Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I wish upon you peace, God's blessings and mercy. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Having been asked to help with tonight's proceedings, I'd like to thank you all on behalf of all of those involved in organizing this lecture series. I'd like to thank you collectively for being here, physically and virtually. We want to acknowledge and appreciate your presence. Before I continue, for the purposes of safety, I'd like to inform you of the location of the fire exits at the back of the hall, the main entrance and the double doors by the dining hall. Management has also requested that everyone maintain social distancing and keep their face masks on at all times before, during and after the programs. This year's series is entitled Islam and God Centricity, the final chapter, and has kindly been sponsored in the name of those who are no longer with us in this life. The names of these marhumeen have been displayed on the screens outside of the Multi-Faith Chapel. Please can I ask you all to join us for a moment of reflection by reciting Surah Al-Fatiha for these and all of our marhumeens. Tonight's lecture is the third in a series of 10 lectures and is titled Assessment of Miracles in Light of the Quran. We'd encourage you to join us for the entire series, and having anticipated the need to ask questions, we have arranged for a question and answer session tomorrow, Friday, and Saturday evening after the lecture. If you do have any questions from any of the lectures in this series, you can send them in via www.shaykarif.com/live. So that's Shaykh Arif, SHAYKH, RFARIF.com/live. Before I begin, I just wanted to thank Shaykh on behalf of all of us and all of those who will be able to listen to him today and in the nights coming. Shaykh, we thank you for gracing us with your wisdom, and I hope we can take full advantage of this opportunity. Without further ado, I'd like to invite Shaykh Arif to deliver tonight's lecture. Please can I request you all to safely move forward into the provided space and recite a salawat.
Rahmallah man qara al-Fatiha. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Now, it is a tendency in every culture, in every nation, in every group, that we create heroes for ourselves and we attribute them with miraculous sort of superhero type of qualities, supernatural qualities. And we bring about events, great events that none other than our heroes can perform. What this does is that this reinforces within our souls that yes, we are upon the truth. The ones that we are following are indeed the righteous ones. They are the superior ones. They are better than all of them. Now find any culture, any religion, you will find that. There is something in our DNA, from our history, that has been forgotten. Actively we don't remember it, but something is there plaguing our memories. We always need some reinforcement. We always need something that can tell us, yes, you are right, the others are wrong. Otherwise, why would you choose the faith in which you abide? Why would you be belonging to a religion that you have chosen if it had no validity? Now think about this carefully. If the religion was based on rationality, if we could ascertain the truthfulness of religion through its rationality, through its productivity, through its common sense appeal, would we need to resort to miracles? Would we need to resort to superhuman statuses of its figures, the people who expounded it and the people who delivered it? We wouldn't, would we? We would just adhere to a religion based on its rationality. It makes sense, it's productive. Now, if somebody came here today and resurrected the dead for us, and then he said, I am the messenger of God. On the basis of that miracle, would we believe that person? It would be very, very difficult. Because on the one hand, we believe that messengership has come to a finality and a halt, it's finished. On the other hand, this person, man or woman, has created a miracle that none other can create. What if they could make the heavens shower, feed the poor? Beyond that, what we would ask is, well, what is your message? What are you preaching? Inevitably, our curiosity will want to look beyond the miracles, wouldn't it? And we would say, well, what is the message that you're preaching? And what if in the message that that person preaches, they say, well, I ask you to turn away from God. And I am the God, for example. We would find it difficult. We would say, well, you're eating and drinking and you took birth and you will die. How can you be God? Can you see this? Inevitably, we will ask for the rationality in the message, but nonetheless, the miracles still appeal to us. It seems that there is this sense in us that we need to ask for the meaning in the message beyond the miracles. Yet, there is something within us that is always drawn to miracles or drawn to the creation of miracles. Now, the Quran is very simple. It says Muhammad has no miracles. Of course, the Quran does not say that directly, but it does say Muhammad has no miracles. And we will go into that in a little while. What should appeal to you is what the Quran is saying. Its message should appeal to you. Does it make some sense in itself, in and of itself, beyond any miracles that the Prophet can bring? This was the whole thing about the Quran. It said, throw away these notions of miracles and superhumans, supernaturally gifted people. Throw it all away. The Prophet used to say, Hal kuntu illa basharan rasula. Am I but a mortal messenger? In attabi'u illa ma yuha ilay. I only follow what has been revealed unto me. Examine the content of what I am telling you. Judge me in terms of the content that I am delivering to you. If you find that it appeals to you, adhere to the message. If not, you may do whatever you want. Lakum dinukum waliya din. Isn't this what the Prophet said? Yes? Yet we want to attribute miraculous powers to the Prophet. We want to bring about miracles of the Prophet. Isa had this phenomenal miracle of resurrecting the dead, of creating a bird out of clay. What did Muhammad have? Prophet Muhammad have? Musa tore the seas apart. What did your Prophet Muhammad do? It is as if we are judging the caliber of messengership upon feats of miracles. We are no longer judging the caliber of the message on the rationality of the message. Can you see that? Yet something within us is saying, well, no, we should be looking at the message as opposed to the miracle. So the Quranic message was simple. This Muhammad, he has nothing. Follow what he is saying if you make sense of it. If you are in any doubt, then bring another surah. If you are in any doubt, then bring 10 surahs like this. If you are in any doubt, then see if there are any inconsistencies within the Quran. If not, then the Quran says, fear the hellfire that awaits. Take heed, be cautious. But this Prophet cannot perform any miracles flatly. Finished. Now I'm going to ask here, if Prophet Muhammad does not perform any miracles, is it reasonable to say that his successors perform miracles? Surely that becomes inconsistent, doesn't it? With that in mind, let us look at how the Quran understands miracles. The word for miracle in the Quran is ayah, isn't it? But every verse is also called ayah. The frogs and the blood that rained from the skies, or the rivers that became blood in the time of Musa, shown to the Pharaoh, and the death of the firstborn are also known as ayah. The parting of the seas are also known as ayah. There is one generic word in the Quran being used as ayah, and we interpret that to mean miracle and to mean sign. But there's a lot of ambiguity in there. Let us just clarify this ambiguity. Moses approaches the Wadi al-Muqaddas, the blessed valley. Allah says, the voice, Inni ana Allah, indeed I am Allah, O Moses. Now, he says to Nabi Musa, he says, look, I give you 2 signs. One was the staff. The other one was the glowing hand. These are 2 signs. Take them to Pharaoh and deliver the Israelites from bondage. This is what the signs were that were given to Moses. Now, what was the function of these signs? These were the signs that were miracles. What does a miracle mean in the language of the Quran? Miracle in the language of the Quran is something that makes the minds of its opponents incapable of a response. So Moses went and threw his staff. The Pharaoh was shocked. They said, we have many other magicians who can perform the same trick. They were called upon on the day of gathering. Moses threw his staff, they threw their ropes, they all became serpents. The difference was that Moses' staff devoured the serpents. And then when Moses picked up the serpent, it became a staff without any additional visible matter and without any subtraction of mass. The magicians immediately fell in prostration. Why? Because their minds at the peak of their scientific achievement were incapable of responding to the miracle that Moses had brought about. And they surrendered to Moses, and through Moses they surrendered to God. Can you see that? So the purpose of miracle is what? Is to cause the minds to acknowledge their inability to offer a response. Now, what was the purpose of a miracle beyond that? Now that you are incapable of responding to what I have shown you, you have to acknowledge that I am from a superior source than you are. You have exercised your intellect to the peak of your potential, and you are seeing that what I have brought is far superior, so acknowledge that I come from a superior source. Therefore, now come to my message. So the whole purpose of a miracle was what? To invite people to the message and for them to discern the rationality of the message and then to follow the message if they find it appealing. Has that come true? The Prophet Muhammad came with the Quran. The Quran is a miracle. In what? Its eloquence, its structure, its consistency, its knowledge base, its history, its cosmology, origins of life, psychology, embryology. When people see all of these things in the Quran, they say, Subhanallah. It is so brilliantly and phenomenally beyond anything a human mind can construct. Surrender to it, therefore. Look at its rationality now. Is it moral? Does it teach virtues? Does it teach societal values? Does it teach progressive thinking? Does it ask you to explore science? Is it in sync with your human nature? Is it in sync with your godliness? Does it give you flight? Does it liberate you? Does it break the chains? Yes, it does all of that thing. The rationality of the Quran then subsequently appeals to us. So the first thing miracle does is it invites us to the message. The second thing that happens is that the message asks us to discern it rationally. The third thing comes is commitment to that rationally discerned message. Has that come true? In the case of Moses, the Torah is one thing, the staff miracle is another thing. In the case of Prophet Muhammad, the Quran is the message and the Quran is the miracle. We've got that, right? Now, when Moses was sent, when the Pharaoh was shown the signs, we did not show them signs, but that the subsequent signs were bigger than the preceding ones. These are not miracles. The frogs fell from the sky. The streams and the rivers turned to blood. The firstborn were killed. These were not miracles. These were the signs of the might of God. That's how the Quran describes them. The parting of the seas. This is a miracle. A miracle to who? They've all been drowned. Miracle is an invitation to the message. They've all been killed. The people who follow Moses are already committed to Moses' message. The people who are chasing them upon their chariots are people who are their opponents and they're killed. It's not a miracle. It's a display of the might of God and the power of God. But it's called a sign. It's not to be mistaken as a miracle. The verses are known as ayat, not miracles, but as personal signs for the seeker to find their truth, purpose, and God. So now we are seeing that miracle is something that is really, really limited in the whole of the prophetic phenomena. And in the case of Prophet Muhammad, miracles stop altogether. There is no more miracles. You are no longer children. You have grown up. Now I will not scare you. I will not incentivize you. Use your brain. Isn't it so obvious? When children are little, we threaten them, don't we? And then we show them our power. But when they come of age, we say, look, you need to be good because it befits you to be good now. You need to do your work. You need to be true to your covenants and your word. I don't need to threaten you. I don't need to incentivize you. You have come of age now. This is what happens with the community of Prophet Muhammad. Humanity comes of age. No more miracles. Finish. Yet, we see this huge impetus within us to create miracles in order to glorify our heroes, in order to reinforce within our hearts the truth of what we are following. To be honest with you, that just shows that we haven't understood the message. And that is why we can't remain on the message. So we need reinforcements in form of signs and miracles. Can you see this? This in itself is so telling that we haven't understood what we are doing, what we are following, what it's all about. And hence we need this reinforcement. Superstitions creep in, fear creeps in, irrationality creeps in. Before we know it, we have lost the opportunity of life, of exploration, of finding God, the beautiful one, because we've missed out on it. Now look at how things are created on basis of supernatural events. The Quran is very simple. The Quran says, base whatever you do on knowledge. No matter how strong the conjecture may be, it does not avail from the least. It does not avail in the least. And two, the Quran is saying, أَفَلَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Do they not have reason? Do they not reason? Do they not think? So rationality plays an utmost important part within the human search for the truth. And Quran condones it and encourages it. Now, the Christians say Isa salamullah alayhi was crucified. Subsequently, they say that he was seen walking out of his tomb. Now, these two things put together bring about the story of resurrection of Jesus. Jesus on the cross redeems his lovers and his followers. Now, I was at a church service today. The people are beautiful souls. Can't fault them. I had tears in my eyes when they were reading their songs of praise. So beautiful, love for God. However, as with us, they too are inflicted with the same calamity. There were verses that, O Lord, in this instance, Jesus, O Lord, he who does not believe in you shall perish. Or words to that effect. And he who holds your hand and comes to you will find salvation. Now look at the things that are happening here. Jesus was crucified. He died for our sins. He was resurrected, so he is alive. He becomes the Son of God. He becomes a Redeemer. If you go through Jesus, you find salvation and you live in a heavenly abode with him and his Father. Otherwise, you've had it. Now, they shy away from talking about hell, but basically that's the only other option, I guess. The whole of this theology and exclusivism is created on what? On conjecture. The Quran says, they did not crucify him. And they did not kill him. And the Quran further on says, even they do not have any surety of the fact that they have crucified him, or that they have seen him resurrected. Now look at the biggest calamity. A few people said, we saw Jesus. Now 3 or 4 people are saying, we saw Jesus. 2.2 billion people are basing their beliefs on the statement of 5 people. Can you see the irrationality of it all? You are 5 people, you are claiming that you saw Jesus coming out of his tomb and walking away. And we have based one of the biggest religions of the world on the testimonial or testimonies of 5 people. Does that make sense to anyone? And we have gone as far as to say that he has died for our sins. So if we believe in him, we are absolved of all sin. And we go as far as to say that if you don't believe in him, you go to some other place other than paradise. A whole theology, an exclusivist theology, is based on the testimonial of 5 people. Think about this. Of course, I seek forgiveness from my Christian brothers, and they're not even cousins, they're my brothers, they're my blood. I'm one of them, and they are one of me at the level of our godliness and our humanity. And I'm going to make the same criticism of the sect in which I abide, and the religion in which I abide. So forgive me, I do not mean to offend anybody. But all of this is based on something that is feeble. The Quran says, "Inna dhann la yughni min al-haqqi shay'a." Conjecture, no matter how strong it may be, does not avail in the least from the truth. It has to be based on facts. If you don't know the facts, don't commit yourself to it. Now, Christianity, with all its hymns, all its rituals, all its ceremonies, they all revolve around Jesus being the Son of God, being resurrected, crucified on a crucifix. And none of these things, according to the Quran, has ever happened. Now you think, amazing. What is happening? Now I'm going to take you through some very difficult parts here. As a young man, when they used to ask me, well, what miracle did your Muhammad bring out? I mean, obviously I was a young man and I'm following Islam, so my prophet has to bring out the biggest miracle, bigger than anybody's miracle. So he did not part the seas. Well, he didn't, obviously. He did not resurrect the dead. No, he hasn't resurrected any dead. No, he hasn't. So what did he do? He did something far, far bigger than you can ever imagine. What did he do? He broke the moon in two. I know you're shocked. I know you're shocked, and you should be shocked. And if you're not shocked, then that means I'm not doing a good job. Salawat. By this time in the lectures, I normally get comfortable on the pulpit, by the way, when you're seeing that. You say, well, there's a verse in the Quran. اقتربت الساعة وانشق القمر. The hour has neared, and the moon has broken. We'll say, wait a minute, read the verse again. اقتربت الساعة. The hour has dawned. Isn't he talking about the last hour? Isn't he talking about the day of Qiyamah? The day of Qiyamah has approached, and the moon has been rent asunder. Isn't that what it means? How do you say that your prophet cut the moon in two and separated it? And okay, wait a minute. The litmus test here is, how many people saw it? So, well, yeah, 5, 6 people saw it. I said, wait a minute. Moon is there in the heavens, the full moon, that everybody can see, the whole world can see. He broke it in two and only 5 people saw it? Does that make sense to anybody? The deluge, the floods of Nabi Nuh, every tradition, every religion records that there was a global flood. The Abrahamic faiths record it. The Hindus talk about Mahanush and the great floods. The South Americans talk about it in their folk tales and in the folklore. The excavated Sumerian tablets talk about it that predate Judaism. All of them are talking about the deluge, the floods, because it was a global event. You're telling me that the Prophet broke the moon in two and only 5 people saw it, or people in Arafah or in Mecca, and nobody else saw it. Does that make sense? They say, well, no, but he did break it. And I said, okay, wait a minute. Let's go to the Quran. We said first we reason with it. Then we go to the Quran. We go to the Quran, and I'm just going to cite one verse to see how we have really moved away into fanciful thinking. So, the disbelievers say to the Blessed Prophet, أَوْ يَكُونَ لَكَ بَيْتٌ مِّن زُخْرُفٍ أَوْ تَرْقَ فِي السَّمَاءِ وَلَن نُؤْمِنَ لِرُقِيِّكَ حَتَّى تُنَزِّلَ عَلَيْنَا كِتَابًا نَقْرَؤُ. O Muhammad, do something miraculous for us. Bring about something. So they asked a few things. And then afterwards they say, if you had a house made of gold, or if you could fly within the sky, and even if you flew in the sky, we will still not believe in you until you bring down a book from the skies. And then we would read that book. They said, bring these miracles until we believe in you, so that we believe in you. The Quran says to the Prophet, Qul, Muhammad say, Subhanallah, Subhana Rabbi, glory be to my Lord. Hal kuntu illa bashara rasula. Am I but a mere mortal? I can't do any of these things. Why didn't the Quran say, tell them, Muhammad, I've already broken the moon in two and you saw it? Can you see this? Look at how Allah celebrates the parting of the seas in the Quran. Again and again and again and again and again. There is a reference to the parting of the seas, isn't there? There is, right? We drowned them. We saved you. Today I will save you with your body. There are numerous references to the parting of the sea. God celebrates His might and His intervention at that point. Why didn't God reply here, I've already broken the moon for you? There's not a single verse in which the Prophet Muhammad is asked for miracles in which God has responded, I broke the moon for you. I mean, come on. Parting of the sea is child's play compared to breaking of the moon, isn't it? We see from here that the moon has not been broken. And if the moon has been broken, then we have no knowledge of it. And if we have no knowledge of it, then we are no better off than the Christian advocates of crucifixion. And God says to them, you have no knowledge. So resist from the temptation of attributing it to Jesus. So the same message is given to us. God is saying you have no knowledge. So resist from this. This is just a very apparent sort of a example that I gave. I wanted to go into things far more at home. So let's look at the sectarian motivations that we have in creating miracles for our superheroes. Most of the things that I'm going to say are the things that I have grown up with. Now, I'm an old man. You people are much younger. The orators may have stopped saying this now. But those of my age here will recognize what I say. We have this place known as Maraddu Shams, the place where Imam Ali pointed at the sun and brought it out into the sky. Now the story is that Imam Ali and the Prophet were on an expedition, and then the Prophet had placed his head in the lap of Imam Ali, and he had fallen asleep. And Imam Ali was sitting there, and his namaz became qada. So the Prophet woke up, and the Prophet said, "Oh Ali, you look perturbed." He said, "Yes, my namaz just went." He said, "Why? Because why didn't you pray?" He said, "Because I didn't want to wake you up." So the Prophet said, "Oh Ali, I'll make a dua and just point at the sun and bring it back out." Yeah? Has anybody heard this? Maraddu Shams. Yeah, you heard it. Now this is supposed to have taken place in Iraq. Now we have no record that the Prophet went to Iraq at all. But that's the first thing. Second thing, why doesn't the human history bear witness that the sun popped out? Why doesn't it bear witness to this? Is that something ordinary that the sun came out? And third thing is, one namaz, is it worth messing up the whole cosmology? And the third thing is, why couldn't he, Salamullah alayhi, have just prayed sitting down? The fourth thing is, the Prophet would have appreciated Imam Ali to say, "Okay, Ya Rasulullah, I want to pray my Asr now." Can you not see the anomalies? Look at how we make things up lazily. Now, the only reason we let it all go is because we think, yeah, Imam Ali was a superhuman, was a hero. No doubt he was a superhuman, but we have devalued him by giving him these miraculous qualities and not looking at his human substance. A superhero is one who is struck on his head and tells his son, "Untie my assassin." He is a superhuman and a superhero. Not somebody who can, at the flick of a wand, tear the seas apart. Moses had a problem with rage. Moses had a temper problem, anger management problem, as the Jewish rabbis tell us, na'udhu billah. But he was very angry. Look at this Ali. He's been struck upon the head. He says, "Fustu wa Rabbil Kaaba," in all serenity. And he tells Hassan, "Oh Hassan, you're captive." His color has changed. Through the fear of what you might do to him, untie him, give him something to drink. If I live, I may pardon him. It's my right. That is the real superhuman quality of Ali. Not this breaking of suns and pointing suns down and putting suns back in. Then, this is in Kafi, that the Prophet took birth. His mother, Bibi Amina, did not have milk to feed him. So Abu Talib, Salamullah alayhi, took him into his care. Abu Talib drew the Blessed Prophet to his chest, and God created milk in the chest of Abu Talib, and he breastfed the Prophet. This is in Kafi. Now you will see the orators saying, "Well, Allah could do this, and why couldn't it happen," and all of that, right? They will say, "Why couldn't God do that anyway?" I will say, why couldn't God have created milk in the bosom of his own mother? Why create milk in the bosom of Abu Talib, Salamullah alayhi? Why not create it in his biological mother, who had a greater chance of producing natural milk anyway? Are you seeing the senselessness of this? So some will say, "No, it's in Kafi, we have to accept." Others will say, "Well, it's a da'if hadith," but the Sunnis also have similar hadith about Moses being given milk from his thumb. So we go into a polemical debate against each other, but the senselessness of it. So why would the Shias want to concoct such a hadith? Because the Sunnis had made a hadith for Abu Talib that he has shoes of fire waiting for him in the pits of hell. So in order to rebuttal that, we made this one. The Sunnis are wrong. How can Hazrat Abu Talib go to hell? We will question God's justice, who has given everything to the Prophet Muhammad and has given his sons. Can you see how we've been messed up? Both the Sunnis and the Shias. Then we have a hadith again in Kafi, I believe, that Imam Hussein possibly did not drink milk of Bibi Fatima, but he got his sustenance from the thumb of the Prophet, when the Prophet would put his thumb in the mouth of Imam Hussein, and he would come back after 2-3 days and do it all over again. Does this thing make sense? Now I'll give you something quite obvious. So we have a hadith that the Prophet said to Bibi Fatima when you give birth, don't breastfeed your child until I come back from an expedition. So Bibi Fatima gave birth to Imam Hassan. The Prophet came back. He said, have you fed him? She said, yes. My motherly sentiment prevailed and I fed him. He was hungry. The Prophet said, that's fine. When she was pregnant a second time, the Prophet said, this time when the child comes, do not feed him until I come back. So Imam Hussein took birth. Bibi Fatima did not feed Imam Hussein. The Prophet came back from his expedition. He said, have you fed him? She said, no. The Prophet put his tongue in the mouth of Imam Hussein and he said, now the imamat will be in the lineage of Imam Hussein. Now, we naive people will say, oh, subhanallah, this is so beautiful. Do you know what had happened in the early days of Islam? The Hassanis and the Hussainis were always contending. Maybe not the noble imams, but there was always a tension as to the imamat and whose lineage will be the imams. So we have this hadith that the lineage of the imams are in the lines of Imam Hussein, for example. They had motivations to concoct these miracles and these signs. Then we have, of course, something that's been quite popularized these days, that one of the later imams orders a lion to become alive and devour a sorcerer. And the lion became true, and the Maulana used to recite it from our pulpit in Birmingham. The lion came down and he consumed the sorcerer, and then he went back onto the canvas and became a lion again. Who can believe such fantastic stories? I was with an academician, a doctor, and he said, but we can't deny, the greatness of Imam Ali. I said, yeah, absolutely. And I said, but what is the greatness of Imam Ali according to you? He said, well, somebody called him Allah and he cut his head off. I said, okay. And then he said, he put it back on. And the man became alive. I said, really? And then he said, then he cut it off again. He said, because when he put the head back on, the man said, well, you are God. See, only God can do that. So he cut it off again. He cut it off 6 times. I said, really? You are actually an academician and a doctor and you believe this? That Imam Ali chops heads off and puts them back on? I said, why isn't it being recorded that Imam Ali can cut heads off and join them back? Isa couldn't even do that. Isa could only revive dead bodies. He couldn't conduct a decapitation of head and put it back on. Wow. Do you really believe this? And then nobody else is talking about it. Abu Talib breastfeeds the Prophet and nobody talks about it as a single narration. But we are accustomed to believing in this. Imam Ali recites Quran at birth. Now, I think we all hear this, don't we? He said to the Prophet, which verse shall I reveal? Shall I read? It's amazing because the Prophet himself did not know what was going to happen 10 years after the birth of Imam Ali. When the Prophet received the first revelation, he did not know he was going to reveal that revelation. Why do I say this without offending my audience? The Quran says in Surah Yusuf, which is not even the first surah, yes? That we, نحن نقص عليك أحسن القصص بما أوحينا إليك هذا القرآن وإن كنت من قبله لمن الغافلين. We read upon you the best of stories through the revelation of the Quran, even though you before this day were unaware of them. Quran itself is saying, oh Muhammad, you did not know what we were going to reveal. Oh Muhammad, there are many messengers of whom we have not narrated upon you, and many we have. So the Prophet himself did not know the content of the Quran. How did Imam Ali know it 10 years prior to the Prophet himself? And then of course, we people are forgiven for thinking that Imam Ali is better than the Prophet. And this is actually what is happening. That we are feeling that Imam Ali is better than the Prophet, but as a sense of respect, we say, well, the Prophet was better. And then we have another sort of miracle that the Sahabi of the 6th Imam comes to the 6th Imam. And I'm just giving you samplers here. And he said, oh Imam, why don't you raise a force and retrieve your right from the Umayyads or the Abbasides? And obviously Abbasides had offered him the caliphate anyway, but should have been from the Umayyads, may have been from the Umayyads. The Imam said to him, why don't you go and sit inside the burning oven? He said, why would you command me to do such a thing? He said, okay, then sit down. Then Harun Makki or somebody of his Sahabi came, and the Imam said, go and sit inside the oven. So he opened the lid of the oven and went and sat inside it. And the person who had come to him was baffled and shocked. And he said to the Imam, what did you do? Let's take news of him. He must be burnt to ashes right now. The Imam said, come out. And Harun came out. Imam said, do you have people with this level of certitude in me or in God? And then I'll go raise an army and go and fight. Now, what an interesting story is this. Now, we've heard this, we've grown up, and we've cursed ourselves for not being sincere people, haven't we? Look at the knock-on effect. The 12th Imam will come when a certain number of people, righteous people, take birth upon the face of this earth. 112 or something? Can somebody remind me? 113. 313, yes, 313. Sorry, I'm forgetting. 313 people take birth. So we say, I'm not a good person. That's why the Imam is not coming. We curse ourselves that if the Imam were to have asked me to go and sit inside the fire, would I have sat in the fire? I hope you don't, because no righteous Imam will ask you to go and sit inside the fire. God should ask you first. He never asks you. God says, free yourself from the fire. The Prophet should have asked you. The Prophet never asked you. He said, don't follow anybody who asks you to destroy your own self. That's what the Prophet is saying. If any Imam says, go and fall inside the fire, question his imamate. Of course, the blessed Imam Sadiq, the superior brand of humanity, can never ask anybody this. But we are left with this guilty conscience, aren't we? That we are not truthful people. I ask another question. If the Imam is waiting for 313 people, how many people are we in the world? 200 million? Yeah? Okay, we might be bad in this region. What about the people inside the seminaries? Do you think we don't have 313 righteous people in 200 million people? That just shows a huge failure, doesn't it? We pray, we fast, we read du'as, we devote ourselves to God, namaz-e-shab, ziyarat, hajj, umrah, and we can't produce 313 people? It's all skewed up in there. It's messed up. The Imam possibly doesn't even want 313 pious people like me. Maybe he wants Einsteins, of the brains of the world, to come. And then we have the other two things that I just want to talk briefly about, because I've grown up with this, the kahani of Bibi Fatima. That if something is not happening, make a pledge to read the kahani of Bibi Fatima, the story of Bibi Fatima, where obviously the Jewish women had invited her to ridicule her and so on and so forth, and you know the kahani. Now, that story happened, and a woman made a pledge that she would read that story. Her child, who was lost, I believe, came back. She did not read the story, and something bad happened. And then she was reminded that, look, you did not read the story, so that's why something bad has happened. So she read the story and she did tawbah. Look at the superstitions that it instills within our minds. We have become so superstitious. Black cat, black crow, crows are all black. Black cat, crows. It's a human, as humans we have this propensity to create this. Not only Shias and Sunnis and Muslims, the whole humanity has this thing. There is something in our DNA that we carry from the very beginning of our history that is plaguing us. Quran came to stamp it all out, but we are reinforcing it in one way or another. Then we have the sufra of Imam Sadiq Salamullah alayhi, and it's nice to have that kheer and meet with people and things like that, but the story, that Kathiawaro and the woodcutter and everything, it appears more like a story of, the subcontinent India, something that takes place in Gujarat or something, not something that takes place in Arabia. I'm not trying to ridicule something, but I'm just saying these are the popular practices that we grow up with. Now, what does it do to our brain? When some difficulties befall us, we don't turn to Allah. We don't go towards namaz and meditation. We don't rely on God. We rely on kahani and sufra, don't we? We say, Ya Ali, sort it out. You've rejoined the heads of people. For example, you have done this, you have done that. But they never taught this. The Quran says, be rational, turn to God, fulfill your human potential. But look at how distracted we become. In any case, I need to move on very, very quickly. Yusuf Bahrani quotes 2066 miracles in his Madinatul Ma'ajiz. Yes? The book is in our library as well. 2066 miracles performed by the 12 Imams, excluding the miracles performed by the Prophet and Bibi Fatima. Now imagine a community that grows up being fed on miracles, where its mind is going to be. Obviously the Sunnis are no better. They say when Osman was killed, Khalifa Osman, the Quran that he was reading flew away from him. And it came back in his lap as his blood was spilled, and it was spilled inside the Quran. I mean, everybody has this. The Quran was adamantly against it. There are no miracles. Now, on the basis of historical events, we have the event of Bani Qurayza, which I will ask you to go and search it out. I don't have time and I need to get through a few things. Bani Qurayza were people who were guilty of treason. They had made a pact with the Prophet that they would not take sides with the enemies of the Prophet's community. They took sides with the besieging army from Mecca, although they didn't raise any arms, but they promised him that they would. In any case, when the people came for the battle of the trench and they ran away, the Prophet went and laid siege on the homes of Bani Qurayza. They surrendered. Now, the history reports that the Prophet, in accordance with the judgment of Sa'ad bin Ma'ad, killed 400 to 700 people of Bani Qurayza. All the men were killed. They were beheaded and put inside the trench. And two of the executioners were Zubair and Imam Ali. Now, I'm asking, although certain academicians are now doubting this event, and revisionist sort of historians are also doubting this event, you're saying 700 people were beheaded by the Prophet, or 900 people. And that has put a big blot on the character of the Prophet, and a big question mark as whether he was a human, sort of worldly, tyrannical leader out to gain control, or was he a godly man? You would, wouldn't you? In the whole of his expedition or missionary role, only 400 people have been killed, and he brought about fraternity and brotherhood and a League of Nations. Here in one instance, he puts to death 700 to 900 people. Now, the one thing you ask here is, it's a historical event. But who has reported it? Ibn Ishaq, one of the first historians, reports this. And he gets it where? From some of the descendants of those people that lived and who belonged to the tribe of Aus, who were the part of, with whom the Khazraj were a part. They were clients or allies of the Aus tribe of Medina. Now you say that 700 to 900 people were killed, but only a handful of people are reporting this? Where are the poets writing about the event of Bani Qurayza being killed? Where are the gallant tales of the Jews who spoke to Prophet Muhammad and they said, look, we don't believe in you, cut our heads off? Why isn't their bravery being celebrated? Because they could have turned to Islam and been saved, but they decided to be beheaded instead. Can you see this? These are all dubious events of history. Nothing has happened. They need to be scrutinized. Then, I do need to finish this off, so I'm going to just be very quick. The age of Bibi Aisha. Yes, we know Bibi Aisha was between 18 and 20 something. We know this, and we've already published a report on this, on DIA. Our brothers talk about Aisha being under 9 when she got married, and the Shias have also reported the same thing. Why? What was the motivation there? The motivation was that Bibi Aisha grew up in the lap of the Prophet, in the bosom of the Prophet, in the love of the Prophet. The Prophet is the one who's nurtured her, and she was the best wife of the Prophet and the best of creatures, right? That is the motivation there. Look at the problem it's created for us today that the Prophet married a 6-year-old and consummated the marriage when she was 9. Look at the problem it's created for us. Now, the motivation there was to prove Bibi Aisha to be the best of women. But when you read the Quran comes out with this verse warning the wives of the Prophet because they were harassing the Prophet. The Quran says, Asa Rabbuhu an in talakakun an yubdilahu azwajan khayran min kunna. That if the Prophet were to divorce you, and one of the people that is being addressed here is Bibi Aisha. If the Prophet was directly being addressed here, if the Prophet were to divorce you, then his Lord may give him wives better than you. So the whole of this theology that Bibi Aisha was the best of Prophet's wife is being undermined by the verse of the Quran itself. What sort of wives, O Quran? Muslimatin, mu'minatin, qanitatin, thayyibatin, abidat. They will be Muslims, they will be faithful, they would be praying to God, they would be worshippers, they would be doing tawbah, they would be virgins and they would be divorced. So there you go. These are things that are made. Fanciful things. Now, I want to end here on this note. Do we know that Bibi Fatima Salamullah Alaiha had a house made for her to go and mourn and cry? Because the people of Medina could not withstand her crying? We've heard this, right? Baytul Huzn. Now, if you look at the internet and you type in Baytul Huzn or Baytul Ahzan, it will tell you that it's located in Baqi somewhere. The story behind this is that Bibi Fatima used to cry a lot after the death of the Prophet of Islam. And that is true. She used to weep. She was grieved. She was in a lot of pain. And she would faint according to the narrations. But there is another narration that Majlisi reports in Biharul Anwar. And he says, I do not find a source for this, but I wanted to. The ulama all say this is a fabricated report because it is an 8-page long report, according to what I heard from a scholar from Qom who is actually narrating this. So his report was that Bibi Fatima's crying used to annoy them. So they came to Imam Ali and they said, can you tell Bibi Fatima to cry in the morning so that we can sleep at night? Or she can cry at night so we can rest in the mornings, but otherwise we can't rest. So Imam Ali went and made a house for her near Baqi, and she used to go there and cry. Now the orators normally narrate this and we cry, because it's a very painful narration that they didn't even let her cry. When I went to Qom in 89 after finishing my studies at Sayyid al-Khuy, a very renowned scholar there said to me, he said, you know why they would go and force Imam Ali to take her away from Medina at a distance? I said, why? He said, because the people from outside Medina, when they would come to Medina, they would hear the crying of Bibi Fatima and they would ask, well, why is she so hurt? And then they would find out that, oh, because of all the tribulations that befell her after the death of the Prophet, and that's why she was removed from the proximity and the vicinity of Medina. The fact is that this has never happened. The fact is that this has never happened. There is no such thing that existed. The Baytul Huzn, it hasn't existed according to these renowned scholars of Qom. It's just one riwayah that Majlisi brings, and Majlisi himself admits that I can't find the source for it. But now look at it. On the back of that riwayah, we have Shaykh Abbas Qummi writing the book of Masaib Baytul Ahzan, the house of sorrows. We have orators talking about Baytul Huzn and talking about the tribulations of Bibi Fatima, and they did not let her cry peacefully. All of these things spin out of this. There is something that has no basis. There is a whole culture created on the back of it that has no basis at all. And that becomes a religion, and that becomes our culture, and that shapes our outlook, and then consequently we hate all the Sunnis. And then further on, Majlisi also reports, and the same scholar and sheikh said this, that when Bibi Fatima died, Imam Ali said, O Hassan, O Hussein, O Zainab, O Kulthum, O Ruqayya, O Sakina, O Fidda, come and say, bid your mother farewell. So he was saying, well, where is Sakina and where is Ruqayya? I mean, what is happening here? And then the narration is that she opened her arms and she embraced them. Now this riwayah has no basis. Now, where did Ruqayya and Sakina come from? Now think about this carefully. We go to Syria, we have a shrine of Sakina, the daughter of Imam Ali, on the back of this riwayah. You go to Kufa, you have a shrine of Sakina bint Ali. First and foremost, the riwayah is not accurate. Secondly, on the back of that riwayah, we are creating places of pilgrimage and people are going and paying their respect. The Quran is saying, base whatever you commit yourself to on knowledge, otherwise don't accept. Use your reason to discern things accurately. Do not be distracted. Fulfill your human potential. Hussein ibn Ali moves on his journey. He sees something ahead of him. The people with him, they say, Allahu Akbar. Imam Hussein said, what do you see? We see the date palms of Kufa. The Imam inquires from his Sahaba, have we arrived into Kufa? Are we in the proximity of Kufa? Those who knew the route, they said, Kufa is at a great distance from us. This cannot be Kufa. These are not date palms. These are soldiers drowned in armor. Hur was approaching Imam with an army of 1,000 people. The Imam said, camp at this village. I believe it was Dhu Hazm or Hassan. The Imam camped. The army came. They did not have intention to engage in battle. They were thirsty and fatigue had overcome them. Imam said, quench their thirst with water from the water skins and the containers. Quench them all and give their animals to drink water. Hur and Imam had not spoken as yet. It was time for Dhuhr prayers. Hajjaj bin Masruq gave the adhan for Dhuhr prayers. The Imam turned to the army of Hur and he said, "O people, you have called me here to extract our right from the wrongful people. If you no longer wish to support me, tell me and I will return to my home." Hur did not say anything. The adhan was given again. Imam turned to Hur and said, "Hur, pray your prayers, I will pray mine." Hur said, "We will all pray together." They prayed together. Imam turned to them after the prayers. He said, "O people, you have called me by your endless letters. If you have turned away from your resolve, allow me to leave and go back to my home." Hur said, "O Imam, O Hussein, I do not have any knowledge of these letters." The Imam asked one of his companions to bring 2 sacks of letters. And he read them out, and the people who had written them embarrassingly looked down. Hur said, "O Hussein, I am not of those who have written these letters to you." Imam Hussein ascended his steed. Hur came to Hussein. He said, "O Hussein, I admonish you not to go to war with these people. They will overcome you and they will put you to death." Hussein said, "Do you fear me with death, O Hur?" Then he recited poetry. What blemish comes upon a youth if he intends the truth and goes forward and loses his life? Indeed, this shame is enough for you that you call yourself a free man and your nose is rubbed in the indignity of dust. Your nose is rubbed on dust through indignity. Hur understood that Hussein was resolved to give his life. We hear here and we read that as Hussein spurred his horse, Hur audaciously grabbed the reins of Imam Hussein's steed. Imam Hussein in a rage said, "May your mother weep on your death, at your death." Hur startled, he said, "O Hussein, had anybody else said this to me, I would have responded in an equal fashion, but I can only praise your mother." Hussein said, "Let me be." "I am not allowed to," said Hur. "Ibn Ziyad has given me command to hand you over to him." Imam Hussein went with his band of supporters and Hur followed him from behind. They passed a few places. Hur wrote to Ibn Ziyad and waited instructions from Ibn Ziyad. The instructions came from Ibn Ziyad that detain Hussein in a place without water and pasture. Imam Hussein arrived at a place. Hur stopped him. He said, "I have been instructed to stop you here." Imam Hussein said, "Let me be. Let me go to a nearing village where there is water." Hur said, "I cannot." Ibn Ziyad's Messenger watches every one of my move. Imam ignored her, went upon his way. We hear and we read that the steed of Hussein came to a place where it stopped and refused to move. Imam changed several horses. They all refused to advance. Imam asked Zuhair, what is the name of this place? He said, it is called the bank of the Euphrates. He said, does it have any other name? He said, it is known as Nainawa. Does it have any other name? He said, it has the name of Aqar, the wound. Imam said, does it have any other name? He said, it is known as Karbala. The Imam descended from his horse. He said, we seek refuge from Allah, from Karb, tribulation, and Bala, affliction. Then he took a spear and firmly embedded it within the dust beneath him. And he says, by Allah, inna hahuna lamanakhu rikabina. By God, this will be the place where our animals will be tied, where our tents will be pitched, where our blood will be spilt, where our women will be made captive, and where our children will be scattered within the dust. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون ماتم حسين.
Ya Hussein, 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 Ya Hussein.
اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی،
اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، اے داستاں ہے کوئی، حسین بن نہ سکے گا نہ کربلا ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، سہارا میری ضعیفی کا چھن گیا یا رب، سہارا میری ضعیفی کا چھن گیا یا رب، چھن گیا یا رب، زمین پہ جھک کے جوانی کو ڈھونڈتا ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستاں ہے کوئی، علی کی بیٹی ہوں نانا ہے مصطفیٰ میرے، علی کی بیٹی ہوں نانا ہے مصطفیٰ میرے، مصطفیٰ میرے، میں بے ردا ہوں میرے سر پہ ناردا ہے کوئی، اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی نہ لاش بابا پہ جاؤں گی چھوڑ دے ظالم نہ لاش بابا پہ جاؤں گی چھوڑ دے ظالم چھوڑ دے ظالم یہ کہہ کے ننھے سے ہاتھوں کو جوڑتا ہے کوئی کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی خیال آیا تھا بازار شام کا شاید خیال آیا تھا بازار شام کا شاید شام کا شاید بہن نے سر کو جو چوما تو رو دیا ہے کوئی کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی اے کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی ہے داستان ہے کوئی حسین بن نہ سکے گا نہ کربلا ہے کوئی کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی کربلا تیرے دامن میں داستان ہے کوئی
رحم الله من قرأ الفاتحة. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة الزهراء سيدة نساء العالمين، السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا غريب الغرباء وبعيد المدى، السلطان بالحسن مولانا علي بن موسى الرضا، كن شفيعنا وشفيع والدينا في يوم الجزاء ورحمة الله وبركاته. السلام عليك يا مولانا يا صاحب العصر والزمان، السلام عليك يا خليفة الرحمن، السلام عليك يا شريك القرآن، السلام عليك يا كعبة الإيمان، السلام عليكم يا أهل بيت النبوة جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Ladies and gentlemen, if I can kindly ask you to afford us a moment of your time for some short announcements. Firstly, thank you to all our reciters and thank you to Shaykh for delivering that lecture. Just a reminder, there may be a number of questions you may have about our lecture series and from the lectures, and we've arranged for a question and answer session tomorrow evening and Saturday evening after the lecture, where you can ask Shaykh Arif your questions. You can send in your questions via www.shaykharif.com/live. Tomorrow night's program will start at 8:30 with Duai Kumail, Namaz, Quran, lecture, Matam, Ziyarat, and end with refreshments. In the entrance foyer, we have made available for sale a number of publications by AMI Press. Those wishing to purchase can do so via cash or card payment. We also have the opportunity to donate to a variety of funds, including this Muharram lecture series and a joint initiative between AMI and Beta Charitable Trust tackling the Yemen humanitarian crisis. You can do so again in the foyer. We'll be serving refreshments outside, and before I request everybody to make their